Hey guys, Fletch Football Observer here, and today's video is going to be a Premier League review show reviewing Game 12 of the 2019-2020 Premier League season. This round of fixtures threw up some big results that affected both ends of the Premier League table and also threw up a lot of talking points. So without further ado, let's get into the review. We begin with arguably the biggest game of this round of fixtures as Liverpool went 8 points clear at the top of the table following a 3-1 victory over Manchester City at Anfield. The game opened with a controversial moment as City were convinced they should have been awarded a penalty when the ball appeared to hit Trent Alexander-Arnold on the arm. However, the referee played on, and 22 seconds later, the Reds broke the deadlock. The Reds went up the other end and eventually the ball broke to Fabinho, who scored an absolute screamer. 5 minutes later, the Reds doubled their lead when Andy Robertson's cross was met by Mohamed Salah, who headed home. In the second half, Liverpool added a third goal when Jordan Henderson's cross found Sadio Mane at the far post for the Senegal winger to head home before Bernardo Silva grabbed the goal back for City late on. However, the goal proved to be nothing more than a consolation as Liverpool saw the game out and claimed the 3 points. Needless to say, this is obviously a huge win for Liverpool. This result means they go 9 points clear of City and 8 points clear overall at the top of the table. A great result and performance to boot ahead of a big month ahead or so, with December obviously being a month full of games and some pretty big games at that. And with the international break now upon us, the Reds will be back in action in a couple of weeks' time, as will everybody else of course, where they will face Crystal Palace. As for City though, a frustrating result. They weren't terrible, but a failure to take their chances and a defensive display which looked extremely fragile at times and a little lost are a cause for concern for Pep Guardiola and City fans alike. Following the international break, City will look to bounce back from this, but will have a tough task in doing so when they host Chelsea. Our next game saw both Jamie Vardy and James Maddison both get on the score sheet as high-flying Leicester heaped more misery and pressure onto Unai Emery and Arsenal following a 2-0 victory against the Gunners at the King Power Stadium. The breakthrough wasn't made until the 68th minute when a nice Foxes team move ended with Yuri Tielemans setting up Jamie Vardy for the striker to sweep home. Not long afterwards, Leicester doubled their lead with Vardy turning from goal scorer to provider as he teed up James Maddison, who fired home as the Foxes climbed to second, having claimed their 8th victory of the season. Again, needless to say, but it's a great result for Leicester. They were clinical and they were professional in their way about going about it, and they now take a really comfortable stance within the top 4 heading into the international break, with some rather favourable fixtures coming up in the next month or so for the Foxes. So they could be staying in them spots for quite some time. Up next for Leicester is a trip to the seaside where they'll take on Brighton. As for Arsenal, another poor result, not the best of performances, and some big questions need to be asked of the team and the manager ahead of what's set to be a make or break month for Unai Emery, and will give a clear indication of how Arsenal's season will shape up. Up next for the Gunners though, post-international break of course, is a home fixture as they are against struggling Southampton. For our next game, we're heading to Friday night's fixture, which saw Watford finally claim their first win of the season at the 12th time of asking, following a 2-0 victory over Norwich at Carrow Road. Watford got off to a flying start when Gerard Deulofeu robbed Emi Buendia of the ball and ran in on goal before producing a smart finish to open the scoring for the Hornets. Watford then doubled their lead into the second half when Deulofeu turned from goal scorer to provider as his cross was found Andre Gray, who sent the ball home with a deflected improvised finish. The away side were then reduced to 10 men when Christian Kabasele saw a red for a second bookable offence, but with Norwich very rarely threatening the Hornets' goal, Watford went on to see the game out and claim their first victory of the season. Another loss for Norwich, and you really worry about them right now. Defensively, they're not strong enough. They're struggling to create clear-cut chances, and they are beginning to find that the Premier League is a lot more demanding than the Championship. The international break may have come at the right time for the Canaries, but when club football does return, Norwich will turn their attention to an away trip to Everton. As for Watford, Great win for them, of course, finally earning themselves a victory which lifts them off the foot of the table. You feel they should kick on now and rack up a few more points going forward, and I'm sure the performances of Deulofeu will be important to that becoming a reality. Watford will look to make it back-to-back wins next time out following the break when they take on Burnley at Vicarage Road. Our next game saw Chelsea move up to third following a 2-0 victory over Crystal Palace at Stamford Bridge. It was a game where Chelsea had the lion's share of possession and were camped inside the Palace half, but the away side was standing firm until shortly after the interval when Tammy Abraham scored his 10th goal of the season with a nice finish. The Blues pressed on for a second goal to put the game to bed and eventually got it 10 minutes from time, with Christian Pulisic heading home to make it 6 wins on the bounce for Frank Lampard's side. A great win for Chelsea as their great run of form continues. As I said, 6 games on the bounce now. Winning is quite a big achievement for Frank Lampard. There's some big fixtures though coming up in December, and they're all coming thick and fast, and it will be interesting to see how this team, given its young age and its size, handles it from game to game. Following the break, Chelsea will look to make it 7 wins on the bounce, but will face tough opposition in the form of Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. As for Palace, going through a bit of a sticky spell right now with some tough fixtures that they've had to play. So you could see that these games are nothing more than free swings in all honesty, but their next game doesn't get any easier as they will be taking on league leaders Liverpool. Our next game saw Wolves take the bragging rights in the West Midlands derby clash as they ran out 2-1 winners against Aston Villa. Wolves broke the deadlock close to half time when a short free kick teed up Ruben Neves, whose placed strike found the back of the net. The home side then doubled their lead later on in the second half when Raul Jimenez scored to seemingly put the game beyond all doubt before Trezeguet grabbed the goal back for Villa to set up an interesting finale. However, it proved to be nothing more than a consolation goal and Wolves held out for the victory and the 3 points. A very good win for Wolves here. They take the bragging rights and looked good in doing so against an Aston Villa side who lost their goalkeeper early on and apart from the goal failed to truly test Wolves much throughout the game. Probably the poorest I've seen Villa play all season in all honesty. Wolves will look to make it back-to-back wins next time out when they take on Bournemouth away from home, whilst Villa will look to bounce back from this when they take on Newcastle at Villa Park. On to the next game, and this result saw Everton secure their first away win of the season at the expense of struggling Southampton following a 2-1 victory at St Mary's. Everton drew first blood within the opening few minutes of the game when Tom Davies met Mason Holgate's flick on to head home himself. And from there it was all Everton in the first half, but rather surprisingly Southampton were the ones to get the equalising goal in the second half. Sofiane Boufal drove his way into the penalty area and flashed across the face of goal for Danny Ings to tap home from close range. From there, the game being deadlocked for a good 15 minutes, it was more of a contest between the two clubs. That was until the Toffees went back in front. Richarlison's fine finish sealed the 3 points for Marco Silva's side to release some of the pressure on himself as Everton moved up to 15th in the table. The Saints' poor form continues. No win in 8 games now, and things are starting to look very worrying for Ralph Hasenhüttl and Southampton as they lie deep in the relegation zone. And when club football returns from the international break, the Saints have Arsenal to contend with. As for Everton, that win will relieve some of the pressure on Marco Silva that he's under right now, but with December right around the corner, the fixtures that are on the horizon are not looking entirely favourable ones, and we could be sat here in a few weeks' time talking about Silva possibly getting the sack by Christmas or going into the new year. Regardless, Everton do have a slightly more favourable fixture next time out when they'll be facing Norwich at home, who are struggling themselves. Our next game saw VAR play centre stage yet again in another result as Sheffield United fought back to earn a point against Tottenham, but should it have been more for the Blades? Throughout the game there were chances at both ends, but the game's major talking points didn't occur till around the hour mark where Spurs breaking the deadlock sparked it all into life. Son Heung-min latched upon a defensive error to give Tottenham the lead, but minutes later though, the Blades thought they'd equalised when David McGoldrick was on hand to tap home Ender Stevens' low cross. However, VAR ruled the goal out after it was revealed that they judged John Lundstrom to be in offside position during the build-up to the goal, a decision that on reflection has baffled many fans and pundits alike. Eventually though, the Blades were to get their reward, an equalising goal when George Baldock's cross curled its way into the back of the net via a slight deflection on the way through, but United won't care. They come away with a point, but will be unhappy at the video assistant referee's decision to rule out McGoldrick's goal, as they really could have won the game here. VAR once again in the spotlight, and I for one don't understand why this goal was ruled out. The replays all seem to show that Lundstrom is onside, he seems level with the last defender, but once again it's ruled out, very similar to the Roberto Firmino incident of last week where he scored against Aston Villa, and this for me, combining those two incidents is all the proof you need that the letter of the law of offside needs to be altered to be clearer and more precise. Anyway, back to the football. Another poor display from Tottenham, and they're rather fortunate to be coming away with a point from this game, all things considered. They'll be hoping for a better performance and result next time out when they take on West Ham in their next fixture. As for Sheffield United, a good point, but it could have been more. VAR done them dirty here, but they did have some good opportunities to win this game and had Spurs on the ropes at times during this game. They now turn their attention to Manchester United following the international break. Our next game of focus saw Newcastle come from behind to beat Bournemouth 2-1 at St James's Park, and in the process put together back-to-back wins for Steve Bruce's side. Bournemouth took the lead through on-loan winger Harry Wilson, who found himself free in the penalty area following a nicely worked corner to fire home and draw first blood for the Cherries. However, Newcastle were back on level terms just before half-time when Alan Saint-Maximin's shot was deflected into the path of the onrushing DeAndre Yedlin, who headed home from close range. The Magpies went on to go ahead in the game early on in the second half when Kieran Clark latched on to Federico Fernandez's knockdown and with the faintest of touches managed to find the back of the net. A goal which proved to be the decisive factor in the game as the Magpies saw the game out to claim all 3 points. A game that Newcastle managed to turn on its head. Bournemouth will be kicking themselves for not getting something from this game, but Newcastle got that little bit of luck that they needed to get the win here, and credit to them for that. Whereas for Bournemouth, the ugly inconsistency factor raises its ugly head yet again for the Cherries and Eddie Howe. They really do need to sort this little bit of a problem out. It's becoming a regular occurrence. Up next for Newcastle is an away trip to Aston Villa, whilst Bournemouth will be looking to bounce back from this in their next fixture when they entertain Wolves at the Vitality Stadium. Our penultimate game on this list saw Manchester United pick up their 4th win of the season after beating Brighton 3-1 at Old Trafford. Andreas Pereira opened the scoring for United when his deflected shot found its way into the back of the net, and mere minutes later the Red Devils doubled their lead when Fred's dangerous free kick caused confusion in the penalty area, and while Scott McTominay helped the ball goalwards, it was Davy Proper who inadvertently got the final touch to put the ball into his own net, and as a result put United 2 goals to the good. In the second half, the Seagulls were handed a lifeline back into the game when Lewis Dunk headed home Pascal Gross's corner, but United were quick to extinguish any chance of a comeback by restoring their 2-goal lead almost immediately thanks to Marcus Rashford's strike as United climbed the table to 7th place. Quite clearly a great win for United, a solid and professional win at that, but with the inconsistency that United have shown and we all know that they possess, it's not a result to get too carried away on. As for Brighton, you can kind of see what Graham Potter is trying to do at the club, but it's going to take some time. Not a great day at the office for the Seagulls in this game by any means, but for them to currently be sat in 11th place and close to the rest of the teams in and around them in that area, it's not a bad position to be in going into the final international break of the year. Up next for Manchester United will be a tough test as they face Sheffield United, whilst Brighton will be hosting high-flying Leicester at the Amex Stadium. And in our final game, it saw Burnley end their 3-game losing streak with a comfortable 3-0 victory over West Ham, and in the process stretch West Ham's run without a win to 6 games. Ashley Barnes opened the scoring for the Clarets, turning home James Tarkowski's knockdown. Burnley thought they had doubled their lead later on in the half when Chris Wood headed home Dwight McNeil's perfect cross. However, thanks to VAR's interference, the goal was chalked off for offside. Sean Dyche's men did eventually go on to double their lead, and Chris Wood did eventually get his goal. And then in the second half, Burnley completely killed the game off, or rather, West Ham killed the game off for themselves after Roberto in the Hammers goal punched Ashley Westwood's corner into his own net. A miserable afternoon for the Hammers, and in contrast, a comfortable and enjoyable afternoon for the Clarets as they got the victory and the 3 points. Burnley pick up their first win in 3 games, and it was a solid and comfortable win at that, and you'd expect this team to continue to perform as they have been doing this season with their yo-yo-like form, but they'll enjoy games like this where they'll be allowed to play how they want to play and face very little resistance and threat. As for West Ham, the makers of their own downfall. The second goal, they were robbed of the ball too easy in their own half, and the third goal, their goalkeeper doesn't look confident, doesn't look even in control of his own hands in all honesty, and things are really turning sour for the Hammers. They really need to turn this terrible form around ASAP. Burnley will look to make it back-to-back wins next time out when they travel to face Watford, whilst West Ham have a London derby to contend with as they host Tottenham. And that wraps up this Premier League review show for Game 12 of the 2019-2020 Premier League season. Guys, if you have any thoughts or comments on any of the rounds, fixtures or talking points, I'd love to read them in the comment section below. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things will be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch the Football Observer. This has been another Premier League review show, and I will see and speak with you all again soon in another video.